two different things are happening in motocross and supercross at the same time. On one end, you have a much more refined amateur process than ever before, starting with the invention of the training facility, which made it much easier for riders to go all in, all out at a very young age, ride year-round with coaches, with trainers, learn that system. Nothing happens on accident anymore. You don't just go to your local race, hope you're fast, hope you're good, hope it works out. If you want to go all in, pick up the phone, sign the check, you're all in. Then teams have picked up on this now, and they're developing riders at young ages, working in concert with these training facilities, getting the riders not only in front of experienced coaches and trainers, but also team personnel and motorcycles that are very similar to what you'd have at the pro level. Riders are being groomed so quickly. And honestly, it's such a good, smart process. When you look back at the years before this happened, and it's basically been about 10 years now where this whole thing has been going on, it actually doesn't make any sense that this is the way it used to work. In the past, it was like 3 or 4 years between a hotshot guy who would get a factory ride right out of the amateurs. Now, it's 3 or 4 riders every year. But here's the other thing that's happening. Despite all of that effort, all that grooming, all that work, the 450 class is in many ways held by riders without that background more than ever. We're seeing this other strange movement of the riders who weren't spectacular at a young age, finding their groove at the right time, and turning out to have great careers. Cole Seely, Weston Pike, Justin Brayton, just to name a few. They have unorthodox careers that would have never happened in the 90s. It would not have ever happened. If you were not already good at one time, you were never going to be picked up by a factory team and considered good later. It just did not happen. If you're Weston Pike 20 years ago, and you are pounding on the door, and you're putting a privateer machine in the top 5, good job, and good luck getting a job. I think John Dowd is the only rider I can think of an entire decade who busted through, literally from privateer to factory rider. Then you look at Seely and Brayton. They were nobodies coming to the amateur ranks. Brayton even lower level than Seely. They eventually ended up winning Supercross races, one each, so you might say, yeah, they didn't reach the highest of heights, but look, you cannot argue that Cole Seely and Justin Brayton and Weston Pike have now made it in terms of they make a good living racing motorcycles. And I feel like in a previous era, you would have never gotten the chance to do that. And the ultimate rider at the top of that food chain is Ryan Dungey, who was also not a highly heralded amateur rider, was snowed in most of the year in Minnesota, throughout the winter in Minnesota, couldn't ride year-round. But when he got his chance, oh man, was he motivated. And Dungey's one of the all-time greats. I know that Seely and Pike and Brayton don't have Supercross championships, but that doesn't mean that they didn't make it. And there's probably only half a dozen riders right now who could say they're in a better position than them as far as what team they're on or how much money they're making or the success they've had. So that means you've done pretty well. So that's what intrigues me so much about the sport right now. You're having the haves, having so much success as amateurs, getting so much help, so much support. But we're also seeing this backside of riders that didn't show that much promise early, didn't have that support, then somehow figuring it out at a relatively advanced age. Cole Seely says he's 28 years old in this interview that's coming up. That would have been pretty much donezo. But if he can come back from these big injuries he has, I think there's a chance that Cole could actually still be getting into his prime and having even better races as time goes forward. They weren't saying that about 28-year-olds 28 years ago. I guarantee you that. So that's the strange dichotomy we're seeing. Riders being groomed younger, coming into the sport with more experience earlier, but also this back end of older riders hitting their stride and staying in the sport later also. And that doesn't include the Dungeys and Villapotos. If you have that ridiculous level of success, early retirement is coming. But for other riders, there are opportunities out there, and Seely's the one taking advantage. He rides for the mighty Team Honda. They're not as successful as they were in the 1980s dominant days, but it's still a really good team, and he's one of only 2 riders that actually has the factory slot on it. But that abruptly came to a halt with a big crash at the Tampa Supercross, and Seely was actually running second in Monster Energy Supercross points at that time. There's injuries, there's crashes all the time, especially this year. It's been a terrible year for injuries, but the Seely injury was scarier. When you hear broken pelvis and damage to abdominal wall, that's a whole nother level than a routine ACL surgery, which at this point is actually not that traumatic anymore, or a broken leg or a broken arm or something like that. The bones heal pretty quickly, but this one was scary to the point of, oh man, is he going to be able to recover from this? And that was just us reading the injury report being scared. Then, once Cole started going back into the media, he started to put the word out that he was actually afraid of riding. And as you'll hear in this interview, it had gotten to the point where he was waking up in the middle of the night, having nightmares over potentially crashing his motorcycle and getting hurt again. And he did an interview on DMXS Radio a couple of months ago where he illustrated those thoughts, and it seemed potentially like Cole might be done racing. He's come around actually the last few weeks. The Lucas Oil Pro Motocross Championship. He came to Hangtown, Glen Helen, and Thunder Valley, hung out with us in the TV truck, and actually helped announce the practice show at Thunder Valley over the weekend. His attitude's much changed from there. Now, all of a sudden, Cole Seely is ready to return, locked in, focused, not afraid of riding. There is no chance he's going to retire. He wants to race in 2019. So that's a lot of things to talk about. I've always wanted to talk to Seely about his humble roots and how he suddenly turned it all around. He actually quit racing at one point because the pressure as being an amateur was too much. And then he turned from someone no one had ever really even heard of to a rider that was winning 250 Supercross races and battling for titles, got a factory 450 ride, won a race. It is the type of tale that, as I mentioned, did not happen a generation ago, and should be even less possible now that there's so many other riders being groomed so young. So I wanted to get Cole's interpretation on that and what changed his career from that brief retirement to finding success as a pro. And, of course, we need to talk about these injuries and how scary they are. And, by the way, why not ask what he thinks could be done to prevent them? Now, full disclosure, don't expect Cole Seely, who's trying to get a contract for next year, to go out and say that 450 bikes are terrible or 4-strokes suck and we should be racing 250 2-strokes in Supercross. Come on, the guy's got to be somewhat realistic about his prospects and what he's going to have to race next year. And if you want to hear anything more about 2-strokes, media blackout. Media blackout. Media blackout. Sorry, we're not allowed to talk about 2-strokes. There's a conspiracy theory media blackout. Yes, we're all about 4-strokes on this show, including our sponsor. 63 years of 4-stroke research and development with Yoshimura. Yes, their pipes are on the back of Cole Seely's Honda, 2 of them. In fact, check them out, yoshimura-rd.com. And Yoshimura stuff is made in the USA, straight up made in California, which shocked me until I took the tour of the place. Whenever you ride, dirt bike, street bike, ATV, if it's a 4-stroke, Yoshimura has the pipes for you. They also do some really good full-on engine work if you want to get even more horsepower than a simple exhaust system can provide. So check them out. Also, check out the newest issue of Racer X Illustrated that is just hitting newsstands. I believe the digital edition just came out. I literally just got an email tonight, Wednesday night. So digital subscribers can read it on their computer right now. It'll be in your mailbox shortly. I had to write 2 features in it. Eli Tomac and Ken Roxon, fairly popular guys. Covered them with stories in the magazine that you won't read online because all the content's different. Costs $20 a year to get the magazine, 12 issues. It's freaking cheap. It's less than $2 an issue. I do not want to hear the things that you've wasted $20 on because I'm cheap and it would bother me. So check out the magazine. And before we get to this week's interview with Cole Seely, let's just talk about some of the crazy silly season moves that have happened. What a wild day it was. If this were a stick and ball sport, there would have been a trade. Some future draft picks and bench players would have changed hands here as Phil Nicoletti is moving to the Rockstar Energy Husqvarna team, which needs a 450 rider now that both Jason Anderson and Dean Wilson are out. How is Phil available? Well, he really was only the, fill-in Phil on Auto Trader Yoshimura JGR Suzuki because he's filling in for Justin Bogle, who is on the bike. I'm going to try to visit him and watch him ride tomorrow. I don't think Bogle's going to be back for High Point, but Phil was only a fill-in guy. Bogle was eventually going to come back, and then Phil was going to be out of work. So for Phil, this is big because Rockstar Husky has announced he's in for the rest of the Nationals. So good job, Phil. Picked up a ride. He's a fill-in, but at least he's a full-time fill-in for the rest of the season. So now who's on Phil's bike, which is actually Bogle's bike? JGR then announced that Justin Hill would move up to the 450 class. It's been a struggle for Hill on the 250 outdoors. I don't know if that's shocking or not, but struggles are struggles. They're not good, and maybe this will be the right fit for him and for the team. I know Hill likes riding the 450 a lot more than the 250. We'll see how well it goes outdoors. And on the other side of the news ledger, also at Rockstar Husky, can you hear me snap my fingers? Yeah, it picked that up. Just like that, it's over for Zach Osborne. The bid to win 4 titles in 2 years is done. Started the year season off in motocross with a 1-1 in Hangtown. Hurt his thumb Tuesday after that race. He said if he had to race a day or two later, it would have been tough. But luckily, he had all the way from Tuesday to Saturday. He was okay at Glen Helen, not quite his usual self. He does think that the crash he had in the Sam Whoops might have been because his grip was compromised with the thumb. But he was going to work his way through it. Fell down again before Thunder Valley, so that hurt. But again, he was going to work his way through it. Only got 5th in the first moto there. And then it all turned to disaster in the second moto. So here's how these things work. This is a story I love to tell, things like this. 2 completely unrelated things that end up having a collision course. If Joey Savacci's bike doesn't blow up in the first moto while leading, Savacci's not stuffed with an outside gate pick in Moto 2 and doesn't have to try the suicide mission of kamikazing around the outside to try to pull off some kind of a decent start. But because he did that, it looked good, actually. Savacci was probably going to pull a pretty good start from an outside gate that does not work. No one ever gets starts from the outside at Lakewood. But as it turned out, Osborne was being stood up and rammed into, all these riders battling on the inside of the corner, him and Gage Schur and a couple of others. They got stood up and moved just slightly left. Savacci was already committed, wide open. That slight move to the left, Savacci ran into everyone and they went flying. Schur did a complete endo. Osborne and Savacci got ejected. And Justin Hill, actually, there told me, he's like, I just saw disaster coming, and it was like, cover me, boys. I'm going in. There's nothing I can do. So disastrous first turn crash, and Osborne ends up on the bad end of it. You could visibly see on TV he was rotating his shoulder to try to get it back in place. He somehow got on the bike from last place and salvaged 1 championship point by passing 20 riders. And that point will be meaningless now because he has a torn labrum and has to get shoulder surgery. I cannot believe it. It's just over. Osborne's summer is just done. Will we be looking at only Jeremy Martin and Aaron Plessinger battling for this title? Will someone else get in there and fight them for it? Just a huge hole left by the departure of Osborne. There are 2 other 250 riders on that team, the young Michael Moseman and the young Jordan Bailey, so I don't know if there'll be a fill-in coming for Rockstar Husky, but man, have their fortunes changed from celebrating 2 Supercross titles in Vegas a month ago, and now Wilson, Anderson, and Osborne have all gotten hurt since then and now. So, in case you haven't heard the news, Osborne's out for the summer. Phil is moving from Suzuki to Husky. And Hill is moving up to the 450. Jimmy Dakotas will be back shortly on the 250 program to fill Hill's slot. Hill's moving up. Enzo Lopes is signed for the entire season. The balance is somewhat back, although man, there's been a lot of injuries this year. Man, indoors and out, just one of those years. I know, you want to blame 4-strokes, I know. But we've had some years of 4-strokes. Injuries weren't that bad. 2016, not that bad of a season at all. There were years of 2-strokes. Injuries were terrible. I don't know. Most of the injuries are just routine, weirdo things. The only one I can think of this year that was really scary and, hey, we need to do something about it, this shouldn't happen, was Seeley's. Seeley's injury, a direct result of they can do crazy jumps on these 450 4-strokes, and if you're not willing to do them, you're not going to win. If you're at Seeley's level, you want to win, so you have to do them. And he tried a quad, it didn't work out, and the injuries were quite scary. Says he's coming back strong. We hope that's the case. We'll talk to Cole Seeley about all that. But before we talk to Cole, wait for it. Podcast. Yeah! That's right. Race Rex Exhaust Podcast by Yoshimura coming your way. Here's Cole Seeley. Rang him up on the phone. Enjoyed the conversation. You learn a lot about what it's like to be a professional motocrosser. Let's go. All right, on the line here is Cole Seeley. Not the usual schedule for you right now. You're not racing, but actually you have something cooler coming up than most people. You're headed to Jesse Nelson's bachelor party. That's awesome. That's fun.
Yeah. So I'm going to head out to Palm Springs right now with two friends and Jesse, of course, and go celebrate his last month of singleness, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, that's right. It's better for you to talk about this before, because after the bachelor party, don't speak of it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What is your day-to-day deal? We saw you came to Thunder Valley. Actually, you came to all three of the first nationals, so you're obviously getting around well now. So what's your day-to-day? Is it nonstop rehab, or is there still a lot of stuff you can't do? What do you do at your time?
Yeah, it's basically just a bunch of rehab. Ever since I got back to California, I've basically been in to see Dr. G, my chiropractor. I've seen him almost every day, like every weekday at least.
Yep.
And even when I was in the wheelchair, I rented a scooter so that I could ride it from my house to his office. It's only like a mile from my house. And so I just go do that. And now it's picked up a lot more. Now I'm not in pain anymore. Like I was having a lot of hip pain in my left hip, which is like the biggest hurdle I've had to kind of overcome so far.
Yeah.
But once that went away, I've been, I can basically do anything non-weight bearing, like I can do body weight stuff basically. So like I can do squats, those are my body weight. I can do lunges, all that kind of stuff. And like in the last week, I've kind of just thrown in like some lightweight stuff. So it's been like progressively getting a lot better over the days and especially over the week.
Is it impact? Is that the problem? You can't do that. Like you can't go for a jog. I would assume that would be a little bit gnarly right now.
No, I can't do a jog or anything like that.
Right.
I think it's just, it's just a part of the healing process, you know, like it was pretty much at the 3-month mark, which was, like a week or two ago. That's when I was able to start, with the body weight stuff. And I don't know, it's gone really well. Like every time I go see my doctors, they're kind of surprised at how fast I'm healing. So like, I think the timeline they give me is pretty much just like, you know, a generic person, but I think like as athletes, you know, we heal a little bit quicker than a normal person.
Now, when this first happened, you were kind of talking about how difficult it was even mentally, and you weren't even sure you want to come back. And then when we saw you, and you came on our practice show on the Thunder Valley, you said maybe that was just the process of being injured. So at this point, are you full bore, like, I am recovering to try to come back? Is that 100% the focus?
Yeah, that's 100% the focus right now. Yeah, there was a little bit of, you know, a period, you know, like, I knew I wasn't thinking straight. Like I knew I was kind of thinking from like a scared mental state. Like, and I know that's not like a stable place to think from. So I did want to give myself time to kind of get through that. I've gone through it before, but this time it like lingered for a lot longer. So it was definitely like up in the air for a little bit, but now, it's 100% focused on getting healthy and then getting, you know, back on the bike when I can.
Well, I think it's understandable, though. I mean, broken arms or legs or torn ACLs and stuff like that is one thing. I feel like once it gets into the core, once it's your back, or in your case, when we saw a press release that said abdomen wall, starts getting really scary. These aren't just broken bones. So I think it's understandable. I mean, this had to be some traumatic moments there.
Yeah, it was for sure. I mean, being in that much pain for, 2 months is like, I mean, fuck, it takes a mental toll on you, you know, it's like, it just takes away I'm so used to just going out and spending every day, like, pushing myself to better myself. And, like, spent so much time in a wheelchair, like, just in pain, not being able to do anything. The only thing I could do was sit on the couch and, wait for the pain to go. And it's like, that just kind of messes with your head and kind of chips away at you. And I don't know, kind of takes away some of your sanity.
Actually, yeah, that's unfortunate. When guys get hurt, it's always like, how long till they be back and how will it affect their riding? I think we forget, actually, injuries do hurt. They actually just cause pain. It's not just like a time calendar element. So it just straight up hurt, like it hurt. That was the big problem.
The first 2 weeks were the worst, and then, like, it got progressively better, obviously, but And I'm kind of the kind of person that doesn't like to take pain pills. They kind of scare me. Like,
sure.
I don't want to ever be dependent on them or, you know, ever get addicted or anything like that. Not that I have an addictive personality. It just kind of scares me for some reason.
There's too many stories out there. We've heard too much to know how scary it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I've always been one, you know, like I had shoulder surgery. I was only on for 2 days, and then I just kind of dealt with the pain. It wasn't too bad. And then with this, like, I tried to get off of them, and it hurt way too bad. Like, it was unbearable. So I was on them for like 3 weeks, which is way longer than I've ever been on, you know, any kind of medication. And so that was a little scary. And then once I got back to California, I was like, that's it. I'm not taking them anymore. And I had to deal with quite a bit of pain, but it probably would have been smart to take some pain pills then. But like I said, I don't like that being dependent on them.
I've heard some guys that are in a super gnarly situation, and they, even for a few weeks or maybe a month, and they're like, man, I could see how this could become a problem. Like, they weren't physically maybe addicted, but you could see how you could, I mean, if you took them for the whole 2 months you were hurt, I've heard guys say, like, man, it's easy for people to say, like, just don't do it, but it's almost easy at times, almost too easy. I don't know how you feel about that, but I've heard other guys say that.
Yeah, no, I mean, your body gets used to, you know, having that extra supplement and start craving it, you know. It's like, I don't know, it's just something that just kind of scares me a little bit.
Yeah, no, that actually sounds smart on your part. So you just had to deal with it. And then when, like, what kind of breakthroughs was there? We saw you're doing your vlog series and all that, and I'm like, wait, in the corner, I'm like, wait, I think he's actually in a wheelchair right now. So did the pain go away first, or did the mobility part? What started to tip when you started being better?
It both kind of happened at the same time. More so the mobility part of it went first. That was like what came first, was like being able to get up and Hey, you there?
Yeah, sorry, we're good. Yep, just being able to get up is what you said. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So being able to get up and just kind of do things on my own, you know, not rely on my girlfriend or my mom or anybody to come over and take care of me. That was like, that also helped with the mental side of it, you know, like, okay, I can do, you know, I can make myself breakfast, or I can, you know, go get coffee by myself or whatever. It was, that kind of like helped with the mental side of things, but it definitely, like, the pain side of things, it almost increased the pain when I started to get up, because the main problem I had actually was my left hip, and it was because my left glute wasn't working. Like, it just wouldn't turn on.
Wow.
So it was overworking my hip flexor, overworking my quad, and everything was getting, like, you know, too bound up. So I didn't know that what was going on. I didn't know that was my glute until like 2 weeks into walking. And then once I found that out and was able to, you know, come up with some foundation exercises and some workouts that got my glute going again, that's when instantly the pain went away. So, I was just kind of diagnosing everything that was, you know, I'd kind of withered away while being in a wheelchair, and then figuring out how to, you know, build the muscle back. And then, like I said before, to get rid of the pain, and then I was mentally better, physically better, and all kind of like, you know, snowballs that all help each other out.
Yeah. So the original injury, like, it didn't really involve your hip per se, right? Like what?
No, it was pelvis. He's dead center.
Right.
It's just, I think I must have gotten hit harder on the left side. I don't really remember. Like, I was conscious, but I don't, you know, it happened so fast.
Yeah.
But I think I had more damage on my left side because there's, I forget what the tendon's called. It's like on your inner thigh, and it basically goes from your inner thigh, connects to your pelvis, and then goes and wraps around the outside of your hip. I had a lot of like tightness and almost like tenderness right there. And when I first got out of surgery, I actually couldn't feel the inside, like the inner part of my thigh. And I had just assumed that I got nerve damage, but that tendon was so damaged and stressed out that I had to get that work done a lot. And I assumed that, you know, like I said, with my left side, I assumed that that side must have got hit by the bike harder, because my left glute was also the one that wouldn't turn on. So
does that mean that Doc had to get a hold of the glutes and make those suckers work? Do there have to be some actual glute work? He actually did.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, right? You gotta, it gets awkward at some point, so it's part of it.
That's right. Like I said, you said that you were pretty worried at the time for the first 2 months. I think it's understandable. It's not dealing with a broken arm or a broken leg, which usually come back together. There's injuries like this. Like, it was scary, I think, all around as soon as we heard what the list was. And then I even wrote a thing where I'm like, man, this to me is a tipping point of like these jumps are too big or these bikes are too fast or something like that. Because this one is a scary one. And I don't involve you guys with that. You got your own stuff to worry about. I'm not trying to add more stress on your plate. But I even wrote a little thing about like, what if we found a way to slow bikes down? Now, I know that you're racing 450s for a living. You're trying to maintain factory status. You don't have to comment on two strokes and displacements. But seriously, the jump you had to jump that day in Tampa, I mean, that was a legit big jump, but you had to do it. Like, you're trying to win races. It's kind of scary, the consequences right now.
No, yeah, for sure. That's exactly what it came down to was, I mean, if I'm going to be competitive, I have to do this jump. And, unfortunately, and it's not even like I hit it wide open. If I would have hit it wide open, I probably would have overjumped it. And that's just what's scary is, like,
wow,
I can go further than that, So, like, you come up to a jump like that and you're like, shit, like how, I know it's not going to be full throttle, but how much off of full throttle is it going to be? How, it's a timing thing, but, yeah, I don't know. It's scary. We can jump really on those damn bikes, and we definitely need to. I don't even know if it's slowing down the bikes that needs to happen to make it safer. I think the track layouts can be thought out a lot better. I think that, and it's not big changes too. I think it's small things that can really just make the sport safer and really protect like the OEM's investments and the riders, and then and in turn, like we get the fans are happy because everyone's showing up to race and nobody's sidelined for the rest of the year because they got an injury. And I think it just overall makes the sport better, if these changes happen. And, like you said, I already have enough on my plate, but I do want to like kind of take part in that, making the sport safer. And, I don't know, I have a lot of ideas that I do want to get out there. And luckily I'm friends with Prater and some of the, the track guys and builders and all that kind of stuff. So I do want to be proactive in this whole thing and essentially make the sport a little better.
Okay. So, look, you've ridden a lot of Supercross laps on a lot of different tracks. There are subtle differences. Is it things like people on the sidelines, we come up with the big obvious thing, like the distance of the jump or the power of the motorcycle or the rut that we can see. Is it actually like smaller things like where you're not exactly redesigning the entire sport, but there are things you think you see that could maybe make it a little safer?
Yeah, I think just placement of jumps, like you can build the same obstacles but in different orders to make it so we can't quad and we can't, make up these insane rhythms that like really shouldn't even be like they aren't even meant to be quads, they're meant to be on off, they're meant to be triples and singles, but we have so much power that we can make them into quads. But I think if we rethought out the track designs a little bit. And another thing I think that could make it a lot safer is like putting a start, where the start enters the track too close to a rhythm section or too close to a triple. Like, back in the day when Chuck Nard got landed on, like it's obviously not safe to have a triple on the second lane after the start. Everyone kind of needs to find their place and get into more of a single file type situation before we hit a triple or. I don't know. There's been tracks though that I'm like, why don't we do this every single time? It's like this works. Like let's stick to it. Like I remember A1 in 2015. The start actually went out around the outside of the track for just a second, and like everyone kind of got to get in their spot, and then we turned and we went right into rhythm lane, but everyone had already filed into like where they were going to be. It made it just safe for racing conditions. I think stuff like that could really like, I don't know, we could all benefit from that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and the Tampa one got a lot of attention because you crashed on this quad like in the middle, and then you had Baggett and Hill jumping that quad at the end that was like seriously like 90 feet or something into a corner, and then Baggett went flipping into the net, which got even more attention. Yeah. So outsiders like myself who aren't on these tracks are like, see, whatever they build, the dudes are jumping things that they weren't intending them to jump. But you're saying with some subtle changes, that can actually just be stopped or at least prevented most of the time.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just small adjustments and just picking out the rhythms a little better. And I mean, it's nobody's fault, It's,
yep.
If we were racing 5 years ago, we wouldn't even be thinking about this stuff. But the bikes have gotten so fast, and the top riders have become so good that it's like we have to find every advantage that we can. And sometimes hitting a quad or doing something stupid like that is what we have to do. And then the next guy does it, and the next guy does it, and it's like, it's pretty crazy what we're doing on the dirt bikes nowadays.
Yeah, because had you jumped that before, the jump you crashed on, had you jumped it?
No, I hadn't.
Right.
I wanted to do it in our last practice, but the track was so shoot up that not really many people were doing it, and I got a third place start behind Tomac, who had been doing it and was fast on that track, obviously, and I just trusted him, and I was like, okay, whatever speed he hits it, I'm going to hit it, and I obviously didn't hit it as fast as he did, and kind of stuck with the consequences.
Wow, so that was it. You were just trying to figure it out during the race while battling.
I hate doing it, but, sometimes you got to do it.
Yeah, and now, unfortunately, that's so long ago, I don't know how many people remember, like you were right in the hunt. Like it wasn't like you were second in points.
Yeah. Second in points, yeah.
So
yeah, it was,
you had to try to win races.
Yeah, no, the only way I was going to make up points on Jason was to, start taking chances like that and find ways to be in front of him. And that was, like I said, the consequences were pretty gnarly that night, but I mean, it's kind of what I had to do. And, not like Honda was in my ear telling me to, I got to win everything and I got to beat this guy. But like, I put all that pressure on myself and I try and, I don't know, it's part of the sport, I guess.
Yeah. You're just competitive guys. Now, you are how long from actually getting back on a bike? Do you know yet?
A little less than 3 months right now.
Wow, it's still that long though. Wow.
Yeah, about 2.5, I think. It's like September 1st is what I've been saying, but I think it's actually like August 25th or something. The end of August, basically.
So now that some of the pain, now that the pain has subsided, and you're, I guess, thinking from more of a place of strength, are you looking forward to being back on a motorcycle? Is the fear gone? Are you want to get back on now?
Yeah, now I'm 100%. Like I said before, the fear was the thing that was like, I knew I wasn't thinking from a stable point. Like I've been working with a mental coach and she was the one that told me like, hey, like, you need to like, not necessarily you need to like wait it out, but you need to wait until, when you make big calls like this, because it is a huge call. Like if you're going to get back on, if you're not, you need to think from a stable platform, whether that's, a month from now, 2 months from now, whatever it is, as soon as you are not in fear anymore and all that, it was a lot. Like, it wasn't like I was like, oh, like, I'm scared. It was like literally like I'd wake up sweating at night because I had a bad dream about riding. Like I was fucking terrified to even think of a dirt bike. So,
wait, that was actually happening or that was not what was happening?
No, that's what was happening. Like I was terrified.
Wow.
Like,
wow.
like I woke up a lot in the hospital, especially like from night terrors or like, my crash, or it was just so vivid and like it was so scary to me. So I like really had to wait it out. And like as soon as that stuff kind of like, I don't know, got out of my head, and I was like, I don't know, like I said before with the pain and everything, like once it all kind of snowballed, like the pain went away, the mobility came back, and then like the fear starts to go away, and then it's now it's in the past, so now I'm thinking forward.
Yeah, I assume it's like emotion. Because you're so bummed and hurt and frustrated and everything, like now emotion starts to become maybe a little irrational factor.
Yeah, for sure.
And I did an interview earlier in the year with your buddy Cianciarulo, and he's like, I know I've been hurt a lot, but dude, when I'm out in the race, like those 15 laps, I'm just like, I will die to win this race. I'm just doing everything I can. I'm not thinking about like not getting hurt. So when you're racing, and I assume when you come back, are you ever really thinking about that once you're actually competing?
About getting hurt?
Yeah. Does that all go away? Like once the gate drops, you're just thinking about going as fast as you can?
Yeah, I mean, when you get in certain situations, you think about it, like, oh, that could have been really bad, but
right.
I don't really like dwell on it or like, I don't know, hang it over my head or anything like that. But like once the adrenaline kicks in, it kind of, it doesn't really I think all the top racers can agree. You don't really like think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That's what he's saying. Okay, so you have this mental coach, and she works in she's not just motocross, I'm assuming, right? She works in other sports?
Yeah, other sports.
Okay, so what I'm getting at is here. So the good news is this is someone familiar that doesn't just live in motocross, and she didn't say, you're insane for getting on those motorcycles. Stay off that thing. That was not her.
No,
it was not her prescription.
No, not at all.
Okay, that's good. Because at least that's a rational outsider. It's easy for all of us who live dirt bikes to just think, well, you got to race again, dude. But even she thought, give it time.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, I did one of these with your buddy Christian Craig last week. Dude, it is ridiculous, the amount of parallels that there are between you two. In fact, including that you filled in for him and he filled in for you. And even the riding styles to me are similar. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, I know. We've become like best friends over the years. It's been awesome. But yeah, he actually goes to the same Memphis coach that I do. But no, it's cool. I mean, it's cool to like kind of have somebody to train with and ride with and kind of push each other and, kind of keep each other in check in a way.
And I assume, you've been through some of the same things, so that probably helps too. You've been through some of the same parts of your career. Like, he stepped away for a while. I think even you had a little bit of that when you were younger, right? So does that help too? Going back and forth on, I went through that kind of thing?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's I don't know. Yeah, we definitely have a lot of the same views on like the sport and yeah, like you said, have gone through the same kind of scenarios throughout our career. And I don't know. It's cool. It just like last year when I was kind of in like this weird funk and I really wanted to get to the next, stage of my career. So I called him and was like, hey, like, how is it training with Blake? How is it living out in Florida? Like, asked him all these questions. And before I knew it, I was moving out there and having the same trainer and kind of just on the same program. And ever since then, it's been really fun. And he's actually gone in for surgery, or just got out of surgery for his knee that he messed up at Glen Helen. But yeah, it's cool to have him around and the whole family, Paige and Jagger and their newborn that's on the way.
Yeah, you had to be so bummed that he went down with injury. He was filling in. He was doing a good job. That had to be a bummer to see that for you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's not at that point. It's not just seeing a guy, crash or get hurt. It's your buddy. So it's same thing with when I went down. He was out there hanging out with me in Florida, and yeah, it's always tough. Actually, when he went down, I was like, I'm not supposed to run, but I ran over because I was watching from the tower at Glen Helen, and I was like, shit, like, I don't see any red jackets. I don't see any of our crew guys in that specific turn. I'm like, when they cart him off, who's going to take his bike? So I just started sprinting over there, and by the time I got there, he had already got on the bike and ridden away.
Oh, you almost got back on your own motorcycle. That was the closest you've come.
Almost. Almost.
He told me something that I did not realize, all the connections here. So you actually were only a fill-in rider on Troy Lee Designs when you kind of got your big break because he crashed. You filled in for him. That's how that actually worked.
pretty much how I got my ride with Troy Lee. Yeah, he had his big back injury crash in 2000, end of 2009, going into 2010. And at that point, Troy Lee didn't have anybody. I don't think they had signed Will Hahn yet. And the season was getting close, and I was hitting them up for months before that, like, hey, give me a chance, and then what happened to Christian, and then I got the ride, and I was only supposed to be a one Supercross season deal, and I had done so well throughout the season, then they hired me, and it was for free too. I was riding for free, so they hired me for the summer, and then the next year I got my essentially my big break, and they hired me for finally a paying position ride, and then cut to 10 years later, still on a Honda, still in Charlie gear.
Yeah, that's right. And dude, you were doing good like immediately. Weren't you getting like top fives, like as a fill-in dude, like almost right off the rip?
Pretty close to it. Yeah, like I think my second race in, I got like fifth or sixth, and then I got second in San Diego with Will right behind me. So that was like kind of like my big break. Like finally kind of made it and was establishing a bigger name for myself back then. I was like 2010 talking.
Yeah, well, I bring up this story a lot to people because I say we're seeing two things happen in the sport at the same time. There's all these riders who go to these training facilities and they ride full time, and they're probably more advanced at 12 and 14 years old than guys 20 years ago were. But at the very elite level, we're seeing guys like you, Pike, Brayton, all these dudes who are like, we didn't even really know as amateurs, and you've turned out to have good careers, and you're making money, and you're making a living, which is really all that really matters. You've made it in the sport. We're seeing two things happen at once. That's the real inspiring story for me. I think you could even say that about Ryan Dungey in a way. The inspiring story of, like, if you're not dominating at 12 and 14, because for a while with Stewart and Carmichael, we thought that was what you had to do. It's amazing, actually. There's probably more guys like you, I feel, than ever succeeding. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like when you take a route like I did, or Brayton or Pike even, kind of that category, you almost have more like longevity in your career too, because you're not like, you know, when somebody turns pro, like right onto a factory team, it's like you have so much pressure, and you've had pressure for years to do well. It's like you get burnt out super fast. You know, you never get to grow up, and you never get to experience like, I don't know, like somewhat normal teenage activity or early 20s type stuff. So
yep.
I think it adds like longevity to you, and just like, I don't know, I'm 28 right now, but I still feel like I have, you know, a lot in me. Like I still feel super young, and same thing with Brayton. I mean, look, he just won his first race, and he's what, 33, 34, and
right.
Like, I don't know, it just adds a lot of it. And you just get to look forward to a longer racing career.
And what kind of extra appreciation do you have? I mean, do you still have to remind yourself sometimes, like, dude, I'm riding a factory 450 Honda and I've won a Supercross race? Like, that has to surprise you at times. Hope I'm not offending you saying we did not in 2008 think this was coming for you.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Nobody did. I mean, I definitely didn't. But yeah, no, you got to keep yourself in check every once in a while. But also you can't, like, I'm almost bad about being too humble sometimes, like, you know, not really realizing who I am or what I've done and all this stuff. It's like, I don't know. I'm never content, but at the same time, I don't know. You do have to, like I said, you do have to keep yourself in check for sure.
But on the other end, is it almost the confidence you always hear is everything? Is it a little harder in other ways? Because it's like, if you've dominated races your whole life, it's easy to think that you're going to go to the line and win. Did you almost have to convince yourself, like, no, I'm actually good now. I'm legit. I should be winning. Like, flip that?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what, like, I don't know. That's what you got to, like, that's the part of, you know, when you're on my side of the things, that's what you have to focus on. It's almost the opposite, right? Like, you almost have to tell yourself you're good enough and tell it, like, and that's part of the reason why I hired a mental coach was, like, you know, how do I get to that next step? That's the only part that you can't, like, that I haven't worked on. You know, I've worked on obviously my conditioning, I've worked on my riding, I've worked on my nutrition, I've worked on everything except for mental. And, that's like the last puzzle of figuring out how do I get, you know, I'm always a top 5 guy and I'm right there on the podium, but like, how do I consistently start winning? That's pretty much why I got the mental coach and why I wanted to, you know, break through into that next step.
Take me through these early days. You told me years ago that you actually briefly stepped away from racing, right? Did you even get a job?
Yeah, I did. When I was 17, I quit, and then I got a job actually just working for a graphics company, like a motocross graphics company that was in town, and I had ridden for. Working with one of my best friends, and I don't know, I only worked there for like, I think 9 months, and then I was kind of over it, and actually considered doing freestyle for a little bit.
Really?
Yeah, one of my best friends, Lance Corey, he's no longer racing or riding, but he was, you know, had access to this freestyle place and foam pit and the whole 9 yards, and I was jumping in the foam pit with him, like, kind of just like experimenting with that kind of stuff. And it was when that whole freestyle thing was like, you know, booming and like this huge thing. So I started going on a lot of like free ride trips with him and just kind of messing around with that whole side and had a lot of fun. It really like kind of sparked the fun for me back into the sport. And then, you know, decided I didn't want to go that route, but decided to ride one more year at amateurs in 2008 and got hired for that, you know, Fun Center Suzuki team in 2009.
Yeah, how did that come about? Did you know those people, or they see your results somewhere? Like, how did you end up getting on? Because that wasn't that was not maybe a factory team, but it wasn't an unknown team either. So how did you get that spot?
Yeah, I honestly don't even remember. I think they got a hold of me, and I think it had something something to do with Michael LaPaglia because he was my teammate and we've been friends for years.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, even we used to race 80s together. So, I don't exactly remember how that came about, but it was a really fun time. That was like obviously my rookie year. I'm never going to forget it, but because of the people that were involved and just how much fun we had, and I'm still friends with the owners of the team, and it was a really enjoyable time. I really loved that year in my life. It was fun.
Dude, I've heard so much about LaPaglia's Supercross track. Was this epic? I've heard it get brought up for years, especially in those days.
Yeah, I used to live there. I used to live at his house.
Oh, geez.
So it was fun. It was cool to just wake up and go get dressed downstairs and go ride a track. But yeah, there was so many guys at that track, like Langston, Weimer, Tedesco, Shorty used to come out, Brayton. So many good guys used to ride at that track, and it's so fun. So yeah, he definitely had the setup over there.
And was your old team manager Tyler Keefe around in those days? Because he's telling me he and LaPaglia are pretty tight too.
Yeah, he was around. He's going to Jesse's bachelor party right now too, so I'm going to go mess with him all weekend.
Yeah, there you go. Was Tyler a racer at this point?
He had just retired, I think.
Oh, okay. you never had to bang bars with him?
No, I think his last year was 2008, and my first year was 2009.
Oh, there's not enough room for both of you. That was the problem.
No, there definitely isn't. I'd take that guy over Berman in a heartbeat.
So what led to the quitting thing? I think you had told me back it was just the pressure of racing. Is that what it was? What led to you stepping away like you did there for 9 months?
Yeah, just the pressure. Like you said, the pressure of it. Getting heated arguments with your dad and kind of just realize how much money your parents are putting into it and all that kind of stuff. It just all kind of wore on me, and I don't know, I was kind of over it. And I don't know, just part of it. I'm glad I went through it. It definitely put things in perspective for me. So just a little detour, I guess.
It's weird because I try to stay away from the moto dads at the races, but at least Mathis tells me your dad's one of the coolest. He's like, dude, that guy's so laid back.
Now.
That's really fun.
Yeah, he is now.
He's got to be pumped. It actually all worked out.
Oh yeah, the day he didn't have to pay for my racing or take me to the races or anything like that, which I'm sure he misses now. But that's kind of when the stress evaporated for him.
Yeah, so he was gnarly. He was gnarly like any other dad. So even the dads that appear cool now, they still have their gnarly streak in them at some point.
Yeah, they do for sure.
I think everyone on the outside says, look, they shouldn't be like that, but you just hit the nail on the head. It's hard to put that much time and effort and money into it and then say, yeah, I don't care how you finish. Just have fun. It's kind of hard to...
Yeah. Unless you're making a lot of money, and at that point, your kid probably has something to fall back on. A lot of these, a lot of the racers nowadays, you got to be there to win, and it's stressful. It's stressful on the whole family, not just for the dads, for the moms, it's stressful for the siblings. So it's a lot for the whole family to take in.
Now, what's the difference for you? There's totally different pressure, but a lot of pressure still that comes with being at the elite level. Why does it not stress you out the same way it did then? What's the difference between dealing with pressure from a factory ride and making a living over as an amateur with your dad and all that?
Oh, it's still immensely stressful. It's one of the most stressful things that you can put yourself through. And it's not necessarily something that they put me through. It's me. These people are investing a lot of money in me, and I know the value of a dollar. I've been there where I made no money racing, and knowing how much they're putting into me, how much effort they're putting into me, and the mechanics and seeing what they go through and all this stuff, he definitely weighs on you. So that's I don't know, that adds to the stress. Pretty much every night that I don't feel like I've satisfied everyone, including myself, I'm pissed. Most of the nights that I fall off the track, I'm pissed off, and I don't, obviously don't show a lot of emotion, but when I get back to the truck, I get pretty fired up.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I think people wonder that, and maybe you guys are trying to not show that, but yeah, I know that it's tough. Even fifth, you're probably not going back there high-fiving people, and fifth isn't even bad.
No, absolutely not, yeah.
Yeah, but do you feel different the way you handle it now? Because obviously at one point it led you to quit. So you're managing it better now, or it's different pressure, or are you just more mature to be able to handle it?
Well, I think now, like, I have more success, so, like, actually kind of seeing the final product and seeing the results improve. I think that, that obviously helps with it, but yeah, and maturing for sure. That definitely, has a lot to do with it.
What about the work part? I mean, is it 24/7? I've talked to you before, and you seem like a guy who's fairly normal off the track, and you have some other hobbies and stuff like that. Can you turn it off? Or if you have that bad result and you're pissed off in the truck, is that with you all week or all month or whatever it might be?
It sticks with you for a couple days, and then you kind of just got to get your head back on straight and, come Monday, be ready to put in the work and kind of just use it. Use it to your advantage, use it to motivate you. If you kind of dwell on it all day or all week or whatever, it's not going to get any good.
Does it almost suck like sometimes? Can you like not go to dinner and not think about racing? And you're like, man, I should just be in the moment here enjoying this. But can you separate enough, or is it just weighing on you when it shouldn't be?
Most of the time I can, but yeah,
Okay.
there's been times where, it does weigh on you, but like I said, you got to find a way to make it positive eventually.
Well, the tough thing is, you would think this is the greatest job ever. The job you have is the greatest job ever. It's what everybody wants to do. It's what you would have wanted to do. Then you get there, and I've talked to Dungy about this and a million guys. You unfortunately are never able to fully enjoy it, because unless you just won the last race and the last title, you cannot be totally satisfied. It's like there's two things happening at once. This is awesome.
Yeah.
But I need to be better.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you get off you could win the Supercross title, and then you're like, okay, now I got to win the outdoor title. Like, it's never ending. Like, there's always more. And that's what I said before. Like, I'm never content. Like, I want a 450 race, but like, I want to win more. I want to be consistently winning races, and that's like, I don't know. It definitely sucks some of the fun out of it, but at the same time, that's kind of why you do it.
Have you gotten heat from people because you actually do other stuff, like the drifting thing? Because I know you can't train 14 straight hours a day, but do people give you heat for that, or do people actually understand how a schedule works and you can't be on a bicycle for 12 hours?
Yeah, no, I get heat for it, but I mean, nobody's in my shoes but me, so I don't really care. And I get a lot of positivity out of it too. So I don't know. It's what I love, and it's what aside from racing, it's what I love to do, and keeps me sane, and it's just another hobby for me. But yeah, I like to just kind of shut off the the competitive racing side of me and get to go enjoy myself and have fun and ride bicycles and drift cars and I don't know, just be me.
Yeah, I'll let you sell us on it here. Do you think it actually helps as a tool? Riders always say, like, if I have fun and have a little less pressure, I ride better. So is it actually a little bit of a tool to have something to break away with?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't try and say like, I need to go drifting because I need to get my mind off this stuff.
Oh, okay. You just like it.
And I got to work myself out of it. I just love doing it. I mean, I think BMX, that helps for sure. I think, handling skills and it is fun, but at the same time, you're getting a fitness benefit from it. You're getting a handling skill benefit from it. So I think that is great. I think I would highly recommend anybody that's not riding bicycles regularly to go do it. But, yeah, the drifting thing, it's just something that I love to do. It's fun. It's a nice little vacation, but I wouldn't claim it to be, something that's crazy beneficial for my racing.
Are you allowed to step outside the box? Like, hey, I just want to do BMX right now, or I want to do mountain bike. Like, or does Blake Savage have you on this program where it's like, no, today's this, man. This is the way or can you experiment a little bit?
When I get my work done, I can.
Oh, okay.
That's my schedule for me. And I got to balance recovery in there too. So if it's like, if we had a gnarly day the day before, the next day I'm not going to want to go even ride BMX. But no, I know I know how the program works nowadays. You got to get your work in first, and then even though, like I said, BMX can definitely benefit you, it's not going to be as beneficial as, say a gym day or a heavy cycling day or something like that. So I always put that stuff priority number one, and then if I can fit in or if I have enough energy to go ride BMX, and then I throw that in.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, so you can't replace it. You're not allowed to pull one thing out.
No. I wish, but no, it's not exactly how it works.
The guy knows too much, I guess. He's too smart for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're 3 months away from riding. I mean, are you like chomping at the bit? Like, I want to get on a dirt bike so bad now. Is it almost hard to watch?
It is now, yeah. Like, I went to Thunder Valley this last weekend, and that was a tough one to watch. Just like, I don't know, just like track looks so fun to ride, and I don't know, then it starts to eat away at you. But yeah, it's I don't know. I got to be patient. So I've always been patient with my injuries, so it's not too hard of a thing for me to go through.
Yeah, didn't you come back from a huge injury and then like win right off the bat, if I remember right, like by taking the amount of time and got right back into it? Didn't it work out like that? Or almost?
Yeah. Almost. Yeah. I've come back for some big ones and, had success. So I always try and turn it into a positive, like when I just get some time to think and learn from other riders and watch the races and think about my whole program and think about, what can I do to be better? Not necessarily just from a fitness standpoint, but what can I, work on? When I get back on the bike, do I need to do this in my corners, or do I need to focus more on, downsiding my jumps or whatever? I constantly thinking about that. So, I just try and turn it into a positive.
Okay. So all that technical analysis does go on. I feel like on the outside, all anyone talks about is like mental. He has confidence. He has momentum. He wants it. But meanwhile, you guys are looking at like, I like the way this guy downsides jumps. I like the way this guy comes out of corners. That's the real stuff you guys are actually thinking about and talking about.
At least I am, yeah. I don't know
how the
riders are.
Okay. So you have like a little mental notebook of like what this guy does and what you think you do and what you want to take and what you're glad you do a certain way. Like, do you have all this stuff stored somewhere?
Yeah, I think you kind of have to, because like, if I'm battling with like someone, say like Marvin, then you got to kind of know, okay, he's smooth, he's fast here, or he struggles here, or whatever. You got to know his strengths and weaknesses. And then if you're battling with a guy like Barsha, he's going to be a little aggressive here, or might cross jump me here, or, and then if I get around him, he's probably going to try and, get me back here. Like, I think every rider has their, their notes and positives and negatives to every other rider. So at this point, we've been racing each other for so long that I think everyone kind of knows how one another is going to race, and you kind of break each other's kind of style and racing habits down.
I went to Moto Sandbox, as it's called now, your riding spot down in Florida. I was there one day after Daytona. So Christian was riding. Kenny was there. So technically it's Kenny's bike in a way. So he's trying to give Christian some setup ideas. And he's like, oh, man, you got to raise the forks. So they raise the forks 1 millimeter. Christian does half a lap. And Kenny's like, nah, doesn't work. Too low in the rear. So I wrote this story about it. And everybody's like, that's bullshit. There is no way that 1 millimeter makes A, and a big difference, and B, enough that someone standing on the side of the track can tell. But every rider I've talked to said, oh, yeah, 1 millimeter is huge. So can you speak to this, how this part works with you guys?
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because it's like, I don't know, you can, as a rider, you think you can feel it. But somewhere like Moto Sandbox, the track changes so much. Like, it could have been a little dried out or a little wet or whatever when he went back out, and then, that changes it too. So it's hard, but I don't know about 1, though. I could feel a difference in 5. I don't know, 1, that's a little nitpicky, but, I mean, who knows? There's so many variables. Like, I try not to get too crazy about that kind of stuff, but, I mean, 5 millimeters still sounds like a little bit, but I could feel past for sure.
Yeah, 5 is not a lot. If you take your thumb and your index finger and split them 5 millimeters apart, that's a tiny difference. Yeah. But can you at least, when you're watching your guys ride, can you like notice certain things like, oh, he's doing this good today, or he's not as good here as he was the other day? Like, do you see all those things that most people probably don't pick up on?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially like guys that you practice with, like for me, like Christian and Adam and Chase Sexton. Like, you pick up on that stuff quick.
Wow. So people like me, we're just idiots. Like, we don't even know what the hell we're talking about. Like, we're 500 feet away in the press box, and we see you ride for literally 25 minutes a weekend. We probably don't know what the hell we're even looking at. You guys probably see stuff, and you're like, how does no one notice this?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, when you're racing, it's a bit different.
Yeah, I'd imagine. Yeah, Trey used to always tell us that. He's like, I think you guys are really far away and don't even know what the hell you're talking about. And I'm like, you know what? Fair point. Fair point. One thing you and Kristen do have in common, though, is that, I mean, you both have those super smooth riding styles. And Langston told me even when he was back in the LaPaglia days, when you were just a privateer or whatever, he's like, oh, yeah, he's always been like that. I mean, is that something you worked on, or is that just the way you ride?
No, it's just the way I ride. I actually think I look kind of goony sometimes, but I think that, I don't know, yeah, Christian definitely has that style of, like, you know, kind of effortless. It almost looks like he's trying to not look like he's trying, you know? Like, he like, almost looks like he's putting effort into making it look so easy, but no, it's just I guess it's how we're natural style. I think he has a little bit of BMX background too, so I think that definitely helps.
If you see a video of yourself from 5 years ago, can you tell differences? Like, are there things that you've improved on that you can see?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've just gotten stronger over the years, so that's the biggest thing, you know, just the way that you handle the bike and all that. And just the way that, I don't know. I get, like I said, every time I get hurt, I get a chance to, you know, break down my style and kind of nitpick myself. So I think that's over the years is the way I've grown and kind of changed my style for sure.
Well, that's my last thing then. So can you be better after this? This is the gnarly injury, and then people are all worried because you were saying how worried you were. Can you be better actually after this? Can you get it all back?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Just, I think, like I said, with kind of not necessarily reinventing myself, but, nitpicking, and then also like when I get back on the bike is when everyone else is going to be getting off the bike. You know, it's the end of the season. Mm-hmm. They get to take a break. I've had my break. I get to basically start from ground zero, build my base back up, and then slowly and progressively get back into the swing of things. And by the time January comes around for the 2019 season, it sounds crazy to say right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of when I'll be really fresh, right? So I think I'll be better. Going into this year, you know, I did Supercross, Nationals, kept training after Nationals for Nations, kept training after Nations for France, kept training after France for Supercross. So I haven't taken a break in like a year and a half. You know, it's been a long time. So I get a forced vacation right now, and then I'll enjoy it. And by the time it you know, comes time to, you know, get serious again and start training again, I'll be in the right mental state for sure.
Yeah, that Nations thing, and I think you've commented on it. There's definitely two sides to that. Some riders don't want to do it, and you raised your hand. But anyone who has done it like you always end up saying, yeah, I could see, like, it isn't ideal. It's awesome to do it, but it does have an effect on things 3 months later.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is. Training those, you know, it doesn't sound like a lot, but like, you train for an extra 5 weeks. Yeah, it really doesn't sound like much, but there were weeks where I was in the gym like, man, like, still doing this? Like, this is, and doing it alone? Like, it's terrible. So, and obviously didn't pay off at all, you know, it's been terrible over there, so it's tough. I'd like to have another shot at it down the road, but time will come.
Yeah, if you had won and you guys were hosting the trophy, everything would have been fine.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's good. All right, that's everything we need here. That's the main thing, I think, that you're planning on being the same guy or better. And some of the stuff we heard when you put it out there, like DMXS are like, dude, you got to hear Silly. He might never come back and race again. Those days are over. You're good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I had a lot of people hitting me up after that, actually, and I was like, and at that point in my life, I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Sure.
You know? I mean, to be blunt, I didn't know. I might have wanted to retire. That's I don't know. I kind of had to go through it. Like I said before, it was just part of an injury, and it just lingered for a lot longer than I'm used to. But now I got, you know, like I said, I'm not thinking from that fear state of mind, and I got my head on straight and got all my priorities in line, and I'm ready to get back at it now. So I'm excited.
So that's Cole Seely. He's gotten over the fear that a major injury and crash brings upon most riders. It was interesting when he came into the TV truck this weekend. He and Langston went back and forth about how those first moments after a gnarly injury, you're always like, man, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. It's just part of the process. And so is our theme song, of course. Want to thank our sponsor, Yoshimura. Check them out, yoshimura-rd.com. Anything you need, exhaust products for your street bike, your dirt bike, your ATV, they've got it. 63 years of research and development, and they make the stuff right here in the U.S. Check out the new issue of Racer X, which will be hitting newsstand soon. Subscribe right now. We'll just give you the digital copy. Enjoy that. And check out racerxbrand.com for cool shirts. We'll get a weekend off at the races. We'll have another podcast next week.